Good morning, everyone. I want to start with a story, something I heard from Jyotish when he was here a couple of months ago, a joke perhaps. This is apparently a story that Swami Kriyananda liked to share often. It's something that happened in his life. In the years when he was with Self-Realization Fellowship, he used to travel around the country giving a lot of talks. And once he was scheduled to give this large public event in a small town, and the president of SRF in that town was supposed to do the marketing and organize this event, and she had not done a great job. She had given a small ad in a local newspaper that said, Brother Kriyananda is going to come give a talk, and only SRF members are invited. And the problem was there were only 4 members in that town. And so Swami showed up for the talk, and it was about to begin, and there were 5 people in the audience. One of them had brought one of their friends along, so there it was. And this person, the host, was feeling particularly embarrassed at this time, understandably. And she was apologizing, sir, I was expecting more. And she said, the problem was that there's this famous public speaker named Gaylord Hauser, and he was apparently this famous personality in the 50s, and he is also scheduled to give a talk in the same town this evening. That's why there aren't that many people. And as she was speaking, Swami Kriyananda described that one of the people in the audience, there was just this expression of shock in their face. And this person turned to his friend and said, Gaylord Hauser is speaking tonight? I can't believe I missed it. And apparently Swami would always chuckle, sharing that joke. And I was reminded of that as I was thinking about this reading. It's understandable. Swami might have chuckled, and it's of course funny to look back at a story like that, but one can also understand if you were in that position, it's perhaps understandable to feel a little bit insecure, insulted, whatever human emotions that one might go through. And there's a particular line in this reading. Everything that Swami says here, I was reading it over and over again, this just short passage from Rays of the One Light. It's pretty instructive, and he covers the wide spectrum of things. And one of the lines that particularly intrigued me yesterday was this line where Saranya read, strive to be impersonal, as if whatever is happening to you is happening to someone else. And I thought that is such a beautiful way to even pick this idea of self-transcendence, this idea of perfection. That's the topic we are exploring. What does that really mean? Of course, we are not talking about any outward accomplishment. We keep our lives very, very busy trying to do this, that, all the things that, we strive for in this life. But the perfection we are talking about is inner freedom, is that state of awareness and being within ourselves where we are unaffected, untouched. And even the Bible passage where Jesus says, be ye therefore perfect, it follows this advice that he gives. Love your enemies, treat everybody the same. And he says, be ye therefore perfect. It is not possible to do all of that. You can always be nice to the people that are nice to you. It's not possible to treat everybody the same unless we are ourselves, our own awareness. We are living in God, unless we are in tune with that higher truth. And only through that, we see this world differently. We are able to see this as merely that play of light and shadow. I'm going to read a small passage from the Autobiography of a Yogi. Whenever you're looking for inspiration, as I was last night, it's always a good idea to open a page. And this is from the chapter 30, which is one of my favorite chapters, many favorite chapters. I'm going to skip a few lines just to keep the reading brief. And this is Yogananda describing an experience that he had during his meditation in the year 1915. In 1915, shortly after I had entered the Swami order, I witnessed a vision of violent contrasts. For months, World War I had been raging in Europe. I reflected sadly on the vast toll of death. As I closed my eyes in meditation, my consciousness was suddenly transferred to the body of a captain in command of a battleship. A huge shell hit the powder magazine and tore my ship asunder. I jumped into the water, together with a few sailors who had survived the explosion. Heart-pounding, I reached the shore safely, but alas, a stray bullet ended its furious flight in my chest. I fell groaning to the ground. My whole body was paralyzed. Yet, I was aware of possessing it, as one is conscious of a leg gone to sleep. At last, the mysterious footstep of death has caught up with me, I thought. With a final sigh, I was about to sink into unconsciousness when, lo, I found myself seated in the lotus posture in my Gurpar Road room. Hysterical tears poured forth as I joyfully stroked and pinched my regained possession, a body free from any bullet hole in my breast. I rocked to and fro, inhaling and exhaling to assure myself that I was alive. Lord, I prayed, am I dead or am I alive? A dazzling play of light filled the whole horizon. A soft rumbling vibration formed itself into words. What has life or death, to do with light? In the image of my light I have made you. The relativities of life and death belong to the cosmic dream. Behold your dreamless being. Awake, my child, awake. It was just a page that I stumbled upon, but clearly it had more meaning than just a random page in a book. There were two things that struck me as I kept thinking about that reading. For one, Yogananda himself, he describes the Samadhi experience that he had with his Guru Yukteswar, and being a self-realized being himself, he clearly had explored the depths of consciousness. He had plumbed all the different extremities of the subconscious, conscious, superconscious mind, and yet it is so interesting for me to think about how he was confused. Am I dead? Am I alive? Am I in the room or am I in the battleship? Am I dying in the sea? What is happening to me? And even more fascinating is the response that he hears through that divine voice that says, that does not reassure him. That does not reassure him that he is in fact playing now the role of Yogananda, sitting, meditating in this room. It just says, what does life or death have to do with anything? You're made of light. And all of this is just but a dream. What difference does it make if you were a captain in a battleship drowning in the ocean, or you are a monk sitting in your room meditating? It's all the same. When you're made of light, everything is just but a play of light and shadow. What difference does it make? And, this idea of perfection that we are exploring, it is a change in perspective, if you think about it, a perspective of stepping away from what seems so real and pulling back into what truly is, who we really are, where that core essence of truth lies in our own being. And this perspective, what Yogananda is describing, that Samadhi experience, of course, is not something that all of us have, to be one with God in that same way, to experience union with all of creation. However, when we start attuning ourselves, aligning ourselves with that truth, it starts to affect how we experience life on a day-to-day basis. This line from the reading that keeps coming back to me again and again. Yesterday, I was just going through all of my business, running errands or shopping, just thinking about it. Strive to be impersonal, as if what is happening to you is happening to somebody else. As if it's somehow not all that important. We are so consumed all the time in this false sense of self-importance. It's that miasma of just being in this world. Everything that happens to us seems so much more important than anything else. Me having a headache is much more important to pay attention to than my friend having a headache. Now, it's even silly to say that, obviously. All of us know it is more imminent, it's more painful, it is more, we are more affected by that. And yet, we also hear this principle. The perfection we are talking about is that stage of being where somehow that difference starts to blur. That me having a headache is not different from my friend having a headache. That pain and joy themselves, if we are connected to all of life, it's rooted in that consciousness. And all our experiences are just but a play of light and shadow. Not too long back, I was at a friend's place, and he has a child. And, just as children in this area can be, she was suffocated with a room full of toys and things to play with, and just, she probably had no awareness of how much she actually owned at the age of 4 or 5. And, I'd seen these growing up, but they were much more primitive in India. These sets of just playing kitchen or something, when people have these tiny ovens and then pans and pots, the whole kitchen, more than what I would have in a real kitchen, this child had, and she was playing, and then the dolls, and there was the doll, and there were all the accessories that went with the doll. Just different, every day the doll could just be a different personality. You could do the hair in a different way, you could put on a different shirt. It is almost silly to watch that, but it is such a beautiful reminder for what our lives are like. We are constantly playing this game, trying to perfect everything. Just this stove right here, and then I'll place the pan there, and then I'll get all of this done. You can watch a child playing. I'm sure all of us have seen this. Children playing with these, they're playing real life, but with all these toys. They try to get everything perfect, exactly the way they want. And there's no rational sense to it. The Barbie has to wear this particular green band on her head today because she's wearing this red shirt, and this goes well. It's not really all that logical, but still it is so specific. The child really, really knows how it wants this here, how it wants that there. And that's the game we play. We are constantly trying to find some sense of perfection in this world that is just arbitrary, when there's nothing here that offers that promise at all. There's a story in the Mahabharata, which is a great epic written in India. And without getting into all the details, there's this protagonist in the story. His name is Yudhishthira, as is our dear friend Yudhishthira here. And he is being tested by this demon in the forest to assess his qualification to fight this battle, to see if he can be a ruler that can rule the land. And there's this whole dialogue that happens between this demon and Yudhishthira, and there are a lot of questions that are asked, and Yudhishthira answers all these questions, and he does pass the test. And one of those questions, it's a very philosophical treatise in itself, this conversation that happens, the question and answer. And one of the questions that this demon asks Yudhishthira is, what is the greatest wonder in this world? And Yudhishthira says the greatest wonder in this world is this: every person, every being ultimately faces the fate of death. And yet, every person also lives as if it wouldn't be their fate. And it is an interesting answer. It's not that any of us here or anybody anywhere believes that death is not the ultimate fate. We all understand in theory that everything perishes, that ultimately all our bodies will fall apart one day. But what Yudhishthira was talking about was this confusion that all of us have, that there is some kind of a promise of finding something eternally fulfilling in this world. And we hold on to it so strongly. We hold on to it with all our hearts, that somehow this is going to work, that is going to work. And all of us come with, a myriad, arbitrary preferences of all the things that we want to do. You can find, in this day and age, you can just go on the internet and you just see. I was watching this, two Chinese women. I was scrolling through on social media, and my mother tongue, I come from the southern part of India. It's a language called Tamil, and it's a fairly difficult language to learn. And these two Chinese women actually they live in China, they don't even live in India, and they have mastered the Tamil language, and they study classical literature, and they're making these short videos of just speaking in flawless language. I was just chuckling, how we find all these random things to just hold on to. And, I was watching this other person. Again, I'm sure we have all seen such things on video. He was putting nails on a wooden board, and he was placing all these nails at different heights. And, for the first 30 seconds of it, you're watching, what is he doing? What kind of art is this? And then in perspective, the camera just zooms back, and you just see this beautiful portrait, and you're just watching that thinking, how did he do that? How did he get all those nails exactly at the right height, trying to arrange? How did he even conceive? And how does one go about hammering nails on a wooden board to make it look like a beautiful portrait that's the size of a wall? And we all are trying to perfect one thing or the other, whether it's with our bodies, with our careers, with our relationships. We are just constantly tweaking something to see if this is going to be that perfection that I will, after all, find. And then I'll be fulfilled. And then I will be happy. And yet, We are told again and again that this is not how it's going to work out. Whether Jesus telling us that you will not be able to love all your brothers as the same unless you're perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. And all of this leads us back to that one line. It leads us back to everything that Swami says. But in my own mind, that line keeps coming back to me. How important we take ourselves to be, how personal we get in everything that we do in our lives. Somehow, we are so hurt. It's not that trying to do things in this world is in any way a lower objective or wrong in any fashion. I want to be that artist. I want to be that person who has mastered a foreign language and has such skill, somehow be able to accomplish things like that in this world. It is not a small feat. However, if all our hopes, all our ideas, all our notions are just confined to fulfilling things on this plane, we develop a certain kind of fragility. We are not as strong as we would like for ourselves to be. We are not living our own highest potential. I remember this is, many, many years ago, in my first job, I was, I was lucky enough to get a very good job out of college, and it was like a fairy tale. Everything was going really, really well. And I was very well respected in my team, and I got very good work to do, and I had been there for a year or so. The details are a little hazy in my mind, feels like a past life. And, I remember I was working on a project with a team of people, and there was this one other lady who was who was always a little bit grumpy. She was not as friendly as I thought I was being. I was working with an international team in Europe and in the US, and all of us were on phone calls and such, and I thought, this lady could just be a little bit nicer. And I thought I was doing a great job, and I was also being rewarded and recognized by my manager, by my company. So it was just a really good time of my life, especially for a graduate right out of college. And one day, it became apparent that somebody from the team was going to go to Europe to work with that team for a couple of weeks. And I was so sure that, they think so high of me and I'm doing such a great job. Obviously, I'm going to be the person who's going to be sent to Europe, and I'll have a great time. This is going to be the best time of my life. And guess what? In the next morning, I open my email and I see that this girl is already planning to go to Europe, and she has been chosen to be the one who's going to represent the team. And, with all due honesty, and I was pretty furious. I was not happy with what was happening, and I thought I was not going to, go along with this plan. I was going to make a big cry about it, and, it was pretty obvious the way I was behaving again, I don't even remember all the details. It was a very long time ago. But, I was misbehaving, let's just say, and I was making it apparent to everybody in my team that I was not happy with what was happening. And then my manager, he pinged me on the communicator, and he said, can we just go to a conference room and have a chat? And I said, sure. And we went into the room, and he just looked at me. What's happening? And, I was pretty blunt. I said, this is unfair. This is unfair. I'm the one who's supposed to go to Europe next month, and why is this happening this way? And then, as I was sitting there was almost this sense of shock in my manager's face, and he looked at me and said, that person, as you might have noticed, was not very happy working here. And I really wanted to give her some incentive to find some way of offering something that would be meaningful for her. And as you already know, this project is going to come to an end. This is not exciting work that will be good for your own career. I was actually planning to move you to a whole other project for you to do independently in the next couple of weeks. And that's why I didn't want to send you to Europe. I had better plans for you. And, you can easily imagine already, especially for those of you that work in, a company like that, I was so embarrassed. I was just sitting there in my chair. I was looking at the floor as, what went wrong with me? Why was I so furious? I remember even the previous day, I was just laying on my bed, sleepless, so angry. How could he do that to me? I was so self-righteous. And there I was, just within 24 hours, sitting on that chair, just feeling so ashamed. What went wrong with me? Why was I furious last night? There's nothing wrong in this picture. This is all perfect. This was always meant to be. I had to almost clear my head. And during those days, I used to travel a lot. As soon as the weekend arrived, I just, took my backpack and I left. And I just wanted to travel for 2 or 3 days. And in those days, I would just go to rural parts of the country and then hike or just stay somewhere. I wouldn't have been able to state it that way back in those days, but what I wanted to do was be with people who were visibly less fortunate than I was, so I could open my heart in some way, not be so self-preoccupied, not always be so consumed with this imaginary sense of self-importance. But that story, I'm sharing it this morning as if it's something that happened 12 years ago, which it was. But I have to tell you, during these last 10 or 12 years, I have meditated on that feeling of embarrassment at least, I would say, 40 times, 30 times. I often bring that to my mind. Embarrassment is, after all, just another twist of the ego, so I'm not recommending it for anybody here. But that was such an important lesson for me in my own life. I remember laying on my bed. The scene is so vivid, even as I think about it today. Just being furious, just being agitated, not being able to sleep, upset at what somebody did to me, what he said, she said, how this is unfair, how right I was, and how I was the victim. And then within 24 hours, the whole, miasma cleared. The haze just moved, and then it was not like the picture changed, but I started seeing it differently. All the details were the same. The lady was whoever she was, and she was, in fact, going to Europe, and I was not going to go to Europe. And yet, somehow, I was perfectly content and happy. And then I realized that this false narrative that we constantly run in our heads all the time, all the arguments that we have inside our own head. I remember reading a comic strip. I wish I had saved it. I don't remember the exact quote. I'm going to paraphrase it here. And there's this person carrying their morning coffee, going to work, and then there's this blurb, like this cloud on top of their head, having all those arguments and fights in your own head by yourself so you can win them this time. It just never stops. We keep running that same tape over and over again. If only we can strive to be impersonal, as if what is happening to us is happening to somebody else. Swami Kriyananda used to say, Swami Kriyananda is an event for which I'm responsible. And that is the affirmation that we all want to carry in our hearts. Saiganesh is an event for which I'm responsible. I take that responsibility quite seriously. I am, in fact, acting. I am speaking. I am doing things. I can cause pain or happiness in the lives of others through my own actions. And I can find my own freedom by acting the right way. So it is not in any way to be indifferent to things of this world. And yet, to have a sense of detachment, to be impersonal in that way. I'll end with this beautiful story that Swami Devi shared once. She was with Swami Kriyananda, and this was one of those days where she felt like she just deserved a compliment. And then she was just hanging around, Swamiji, hoping that he would say something nice. And Swami picked on that thought. Swami always did. And he looked at Devi with just all the sweetness and kindness, and he told her, Devi, nobody is special to me. I am not even special to myself. And that is what Jesus is talking about when he says, be ye therefore perfect. For nobody to be special for us to be able to see everybody the same, for us to have that same compassion, same kindness, to look at everybody as our brother and sister, we also need to be impersonal with ourselves. Not walk around consumed in all the stories that the mind tells us, and always know that all of this light and shadow, this will all diminish, this will all disappear in meditation when we are able to touch into that stillness. Just as Yogananda promised, that divine voice promised or explained to Yogananda, what does life or death have to do with light? You are made of light. Awake, my child, awake. God bless you.
Door of my heart, Without seeing thee, my Lord, will my days fly away. Without seeing thee, my Lord, night and day, I look for thee night and day, night and day, I look for thee night and day.
Please sing along.
Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days fly away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee night and day, night and day.